Hello and welcome everybody to this week's edition of the Travel Coffee Break. I'm Alistair Mackenzie, and with me I've got my regular guest Malcolm Ginsberg, and today's a slightly retro feel to it because I'm doing something I haven't done. I looked it up actually. I haven't done since December last year. I'm having an open mic session, so if you'd like to join us, you just need a desktop or a laptop with a webcam and a mic. Most come equipped with that already. Actually, a tablet will do, but you don't get anything like as much. You don't get as many apps with it, basically. But it is technically possible to use a tablet. A pair of headphones or earphones so that we don't get the feedback. And a quiet room is good, and stable Wi-Fi, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and a Google Plus, or at least a Google account, helps when you're doing the sign in if you haven't done it before. But that's, if you'd like to join us and talk about travel and tourism, then do feel welcome to do that. In the meantime, Malcolm and I usually look at the week's aviation news. Malcolm runs Business Travel News, which is a weekly newsletter, comes out in the very early hours of Monday morning. And in fact, Malcolm, you've just this week, because a week is a long time in aviation news, and you're now updating it because I know you set up a Twitter account so you can put in updates as they happen.
Yes, they're not full updates really. They're because I come out weekly. It's not a rolling news operation. I've just put in some tempters in the hope that people will go and have a proper look at it on Monday. IATA, for instance, this week are looking at the bag sizes for the cabins. Well, they'll be looking at them for some time now, but it is an idea. The idea is to make them a bit slimmer so that there's enough room for everybody's bags to go in. The problem is it's going to take 20 years for all the old aircraft to go. So, but anyhow, they are working at it. And the other thing, of course, is that the EasyJets and Ryanairs of this world don't belong to IATA.
Aha. Okay. Yes, that will kind of mess it up. But even then, even if they do get agreement, and we're talking about narrowing, but not by much of a margin.
2 inches.
Presumably. 2 inches.
2 inches.
So all that really involves is actually just saying to everybody that's what it is, and resizing those little measuring things that we put our bags into at the gate. But that's essentially it, because the actual overheads aren't changing in any shape or form. We know we get better ones these days with Boeing 787s and the like, but essentially that bit of it isn't changing. It's just making the bags smaller. So are we not going to wind up in a situation where where like road building, we build bigger roads because we need the capacity, and they fill up like that, and we're back to square one? Is it not going to be a bit like that, do you think? Well,
to be fair, the overhead bins have been increased in size steadily, and the Neo, the new Airbus 320 series, and the Max will have slightly bigger overhead bins. In fact, the Max has already got them on the earlier NGs. So no, I agree with you totally.
We should say the Max is, you're referring to the Boeing 737, which is the workhorse of most low-cost airlines. Max, of which we've just seen the very first one being.
Right. The situation is there are 2 aircraft that have been around a long time. The Boeing 737 since 1960 something or other.
That's the one we've all flown on with EasyJet or Ryanair to the Spanish holiday.
Yep. And then 20 years later, Airbus came along and copied it, but made it just that slightly bit wider. And everybody thinks of the 320 series, the Airbus, as a new aircraft, but it's not. It's quite old now. Anyhow, Airbus then decided that they want to revamp the aircraft, make it allegedly 20% more efficient, and they've come out with an aircraft called the Neo, the first of which have flown, the first of which is supposed to be delivered later this year. And in fact, at the Paris Air Show next week, you may hear a lot of noise about it. Boeing didn't quite know what they wanted to do. In the end, they've taken the easy route and have come out with something called the Max, which is a 737 update. And that's running about 2 years behind the Airbus aircraft. So the Max is a couple of years away yet. But as a passenger, quite frankly, you won't notice it.
Speaking of juggling with space. One of the other stories this week has been about, and I'm not sure which aircraft we're talking about now, but it's been about reducing the size of toilets so that we can cram in a couple of extra rows or an extra row.
Well, this is EasyJet, and in fact, I carried out an inspection last week. I flew down. I flew with EasyJet on their to their Innovation Day in Milan, which I can talk about. And I did inspect the rear. What's happened is there's a bit more space at the back, behind the galley, and they're going to put another row of seats in, and they're going to move the loo. You can't have a much smaller loo than you've got at the moment. And as we well know in the papers, we're all getting a bit larger as well.
So they're not resizing the loos. Is that what you're saying? They're just jiggling with the...
They're changing the configuration, and the configuration of the loo is going to be on the left-hand side at the back, rather than where it is at the moment. And they said they're going to get another row of seats in. In fact, if you fly on Vueling, which I haven't done recently, their very latest aircraft have this updated loo system.
Oh, okay. That EasyJet Innovations, you say it was in Milan. What was all that about? What did they talk about there?
EasyJet, PR-wise, it's run by a guy called Paul Moore, who was Richard Branson's right-hand man for many years. He's very, very bright. So what they do is every year they get together all the media from all over Europe. It's wherever they have it, they can fly them in. Costs them very, very little. And they had this Innovation Day, and they talk about all their latest advances in technology. The most interesting, in fact, was something that we won't actually see ourselves. It's called a drone. We all know what a drone is. And instead of a guy going up on the ladder inspecting the aircraft, you fly this drone about. And they managed to do it in front of 130 of the media in a hangar and demonstrate it to us. It's clearly very safe, and it's clearly the way it's going forward. I have heard nothing from British Airways on this, so we don't know what they're doing at all.
That is interesting. I did see that and was struck by it. And there were one or two other aspects about the way that they were organising themselves in engineering. Hats off to EasyJet, because you would think if you are a low-cost carrier, then really what you're about is just moving bums from one place to another, and anything else isn't core business and you wouldn't be interested in it. But EasyJet have always been actually quite sort of cutting edge when it comes to trying out new developments. And I'm thinking particularly of their reaction to the Icelandic volcano. Remember that period when everybody was banned from flying anywhere near that part of the world. And EasyJet were one of those companies who were straight out there developing detection systems. Quite
so, and they are working on this, and in fact they expect to have a proper trial version by about January, February of next year, ready for CAA certification. We've seen how they want to do it. They took us all out to one of the Italian islands last year, and in fact again got the media in from all over the world. When you've got a big operation such as that, it's very easy. What they did at Milan, they had 14 countries represented, all of which flew into Milan. And Caroline McCall, the chief executive, was there. And the whole day was very good, very cost effective.
Speaking of future developments and airline passenger experience, as we call it, APEX, one of the other things that you've attended recently is Data Arts, who are a software company who were talking about the Internet of Things.
Yes. Now, that's a good question. For somebody of my age, it's all a bit mystifying. I believe that London City Airport are also very much into that. What they mean by Internet of Things and these fancy words is what you and I call connectivity. It's very simple. When you come into the airport, you get your phone out and it tells you what gate to go to, how far it is to that gate, if the aircraft's running late. All these things are being brought together. But much more important, it's actually being brought together in the operations center, because they can then work out how things are going, if there's going to be a delay, if there's going to be having to night stop the aircraft and everything else. And also in engineering. I mean, we are really going down that road now. And it's a great cost saving for the airline. And you've got to give full credit to EasyJet. They're out to make money. Everybody agrees with that, but they are spending a lot of money on all these sort of developments, which you don't see with other carriers.
And it's actually it's industry wide as well. It's not just the airlines, but several of the airports have already been quite ahead of the game. I've got a feeling off the top of my head that Oslo, Gardermoen, has been developing, and Finland as well. Helsinki have been developing these kind of systems in the airports for keeping passengers up to date and keeping themselves up to date on the progress of passengers. Because clearly, if you're a passenger and you've got a mobile phone on you, they can track you through the building, so they know that you've passed through security, and they know you've got into the lounge or wherever it is, so they can work out whether there's going to be delays with everybody turning up at the gate on time or not. But equally, they can tell you, oh, you've got through the security, the gate will be coming, will be 4-3, and it'll take you from where you are now 15 minutes to walk there.
Yeah, that's quite so. The Helsinki, they're doing the same thing. I mean, it's getting really advanced now. The hotel company is now able to allocate your room on your phone, so that when you turn up at the hotel, you're already checked in and your room has been allocated. What I then asked somebody, one of the clever IT guys, well, in that case, if we've got
was it Greg Abbott, by the way?
The hotel group.
No, from Data Art.
From that. No, this is we're talking about the Data Art thing. I can talk about separately, but we're talking about EasyJet now. I could have asked the same question of Data Art regarding the telephone, where you've got your pass and everything else on. Why not the doors of the hotels? Instead of having keys to lose, you just place your telephone by the door. My biggest gripe and worry is that we've all got these things. They've all got 6-7 hours battery life, and then we've got battery life. And you get to the gate, and the guy says, "Terribly sorry, Mr. Ginsberg, can't go on board, can't check you in," and they've got no means of doing it.
Yeah, we need to find practical ways around this, and everybody else's worries are also based around security. What if my phone is nicked, and that's always, and what if my phone is hacked, and that's always a big issue. Although I see from the latest Apple developers conference that we had this in the last couple of days, one of the directions that we're moving towards more rapidly now is phones that are actually unlocked by either your iris, looking at it through the camera, or through your voice or fingerprint. So it'll presumably get a little bit better. WestJet, I was going to ask you about. WestJet is a name that Canadians and Americans and people over in North America will have heard of. It's an airline, but over on this side of the Atlantic, we won't until now.
Quite right. They're actually starting up a 7-day-week service between Glasgow and Nova Scotia. The two communities have a lot between them, and of course Cunard. In fact, Cunard himself came from Halifax, and they are starting up a 7-day-a-week operation. To be fair, when you actually look at it, it's another 737. They're not carrying an awful lot of passengers, but it's a very big airline. I can't remember the numbers offhand. It was either 18 million or 25 million passengers, based in Calgary. So it is a big, successful, very strong, very healthy airline. And this service, from what I've spoken to people from Scotland, and they're very excited about it.
And how long does it take?
That's an interesting question. You asked. I actually asked the same question. So I went to one of these sites that you can go to, and it said 4 hours 45 minutes. It's actually scheduled 5 hours 15 minutes. So there we are. But it's about the 5 hours.
5 hours 15 minutes. It's blocked. So it's about the same as flying to Athens.
Yeah, it's a fairly short. No, it's longer than Athens is 4 hours, but it's a bit longer. But it's across the North Atlantic, and if you want to go from one cold climate to another, it's a fine way of travelling.
We've got a lot to thank ETOPS for, haven't we?
Yes. And you're not asking questions about old jet airplanes now, are you?
No, I wasn't. But I was just ETOPS, for those who don't know, it's a sort of kind of in joke between aviation enthusiasts. ETOPS was extended twin engine operations, I think was what it stands for.
Correct.
But essentially it was. It used to be that you weren't allowed to fly across a big expanse of water, the Atlantic, with more than, or rather less than, 4 engines, because the idea was you needed to, if something went wrong, you needed to be able to keep in the air long enough to divert to the nearest airfield. But as engines and engine management systems became more and more reliable, I think it started with the Boeing 777, didn't it? The airlines began to argue, and the aircraft manufacturers, that actually having 2 engines was safe enough, and hence ETOPS was born, and now Boeing 737s can fly across from Halifax to Glasgow.
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting. If you recall, Richard Branson got it completely and utterly wrong, and pour across the Atlantic, or words to that effect, was what you needed. And he went on and on, and he bought more and more 747s until he suddenly realised actually twin-engined aircraft worked. And he's now changed all these 74s, or he will be, for 330s and 787s.
340s, Airbus
340s.
With Rolls-Royce engines. I remember him doing it.
Yes, Rolls-Royce 340s, and how wonderful they are. He's nearly got rid of the last of them. But I must also take you back 60 odd years to the Royal Air Force of the 1945, because the first jet fighters of that period were also twin engines, and they had a range of something less than 2 hours and were not very reliable. There's only one flying now, and that's based in Coventry, and that was built in 1949. I believe it's actually up for sale, but
it's a camera.
No, this is a Meteor. Cam was a bit later. You start with the Meteor as the Royal Air Force first jet aircraft, 1945. It was good for tipping over V1 bombers as they came in. That was the thing called the doodle bug, and they couldn't see how to shoot them down. And they thought that if you sort of glided in next to it, tipped your wing up, it sent the thing into oblivion.
Yes, the gyroscope would flip, and it would.
And that was the first one. Then it came a very pretty aircraft called the Vampire, which only had 1 engine.
Yep, I remember that with twin booms.
With twin booms. But anyhow, this 1949 built Gloucester Meteor is the world's oldest twin-engine aircraft now flying.
And there's an opportunity to see it soon.
Oh yes, at the end of July, it's going to be flying at Coventry. But my point really is that even this aircraft today is not very reliable. You have to be very, very delicate with the controls. The Boeing 777-300 can fly up to 14 hours non-stop now, and instead of flying within 90 minutes of an airport, I think it's up to 180 minutes now across water. So yeah, they're doing okay.
Yeah. Interesting that you should mention that, because we've got the Coventry Air pageant coming up, and I know that. Do you have an involvement with that, or because it was? I got an email from you about it the other day. So is it just a publicity role, or do you have a role behind the scenes? Or? I've
been involved with a gentleman called Mike Collett, who's a Yorkshireman now, based for many years in Jersey, and a real enthusiast. He has a collection of about 30 aircraft, and he also owned Coventry Airport at one stage. But once a year, they have what they term the Classic Air Force display at Coventry. It's towards the end of July. You can look up Classic on the web, and they'll be flying a lot of old aircraft from the 1940s, 1950s. There won't be any Spitfires. There won't be any Hurricanes. There may be a Canberra. There'll certainly be the de Havilland Rapid, which was the commuter aircraft of those days, and there'll be the odd DC-3, lots of elderly aircraft, including the fighters that I've just mentioned.
Oh wow! The Rapid is always extremely popular. It's a very elegant-looking biplane, twin-engined, with that sort of long, pointy nose, and people love to go for rides in it. Will they be taking people in rides from the air pageant?
Oh yes, there's going to be. I mean, it's the Embraer of its day, except it only took nine passengers. It's a lovely aircraft to fly. It's quite slow, and you go from Coventry over Warwick Castle and Leamington and the rest of it up there. It's a lovely flight. It's not cheap, unfortunately, because these things are on a thing called avgas, and they're very expensive to fly. So I think a trip's about £75.
Okay. Okay. Good. Well, there you go. It's July the 17th, I want to say, but I'm not sure if that's right. What was the date?
24, but I'm not sure. But I've
Okay.
sort of been the honorary publicity officer for them for many a year.
Okay, well, I'll put it in the show notes anyway. But if you want to find it even quicker than that, then you could always Google it. It's the Coventry Air Pageant.
Yeah, the classic Air Force is called.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go for that. Okay, we've not got anybody show up to join us for the live open mic thing. So I think what we'll do, Malcolm, is call it a day there. I'm not sure about next week. I've got a pop-up hangout on Tuesday night beforehand, and I may leave that as it were, the week's hangout. At the moment, I don't have plans for the Wednesday one, so it'll be a question of watching this space as per normal to see what's going to happen and what we're going to be talking about.
Next week, the Paris Air Show starts on Monday. Should be very interesting. It doesn't look like Airbus are going to have any 380 orders after all the noise. I think it was United that they were hoping might go for the aircraft, but haven't. We don't quite know what's going to happen with Malaysia, whether they keep their aircraft. They've certainly put 2 up for sale.
They've got 6. They put 2 up for sale. So there's 2 second-hand A380s on the market.
Yeah, if you want to in your garage or you build your house around it. Turkish are talking about it. So that's next week.
I saw something this morning about along the lines of Airbus saying that they were anticipating continuing with production on A380s through to 2018. So maybe they've got something in the woodwork that they haven't told us about that they'll announce at the Paris Air Show. One thing they are announcing at the Paris Air Show, will be demonstrating, is their little electric airplane. It's a concept.
Yeah, they'll be showing that. They'll also be bringing in the 350, which they haven't actually had really properly. The situation with the 380 is they have orders right up to 2018. So they're only about halfway through. Emirates could easily take a few more if they come in at the right price. And then the following week, Star Alliance, the chief executives, all get together in Warsaw. The only bad news, they spread the whole thing over 3 days, which some of us possibly resent. But it does give an opportunity to actually walk up to a chief executive without all his PR people around him, or what we in the travel writers call their bodyguards, and find out what's going on.
Ask awkward questions.
Yeah, many a time, and it's still happening now with Walsh's at the IATA conference, which is running as we speak, and there are journalists going up to him and getting strange answers out.
Are we over and above the issue of smaller baggage in-flight bags sizes? Is there anything else that we're expecting to come suddenly miraculously out of the IATA conference? Something unexpected?
Well, there is this development of the fight between the Gulf Airlines and those in the United States, where the Director General of the of IATA has said, well, I'm the referee, but I'm getting out of the ring. I don't want to have anything to do with it. Quite seriously, there are some nasty goings on down there at the moment. Akbar al-Bakr of Qatar has said that if they won't play the ball game that I want to play, I'm going to withdraw from One World. He's also the director of Heathrow Airport, So Al-Bakr is coming in very, very heavy now in order to get his way. He's also been given the Legion d'Honneur of France.
Wow.
He's
Okay.
now to be termed as His Excellency, by the way. To me, he's still Akbar. But there we are.
Okay, excellent. Well, we'll look forward to hearing about all of that, possibly next week, but certainly over the next few weeks. So thank you for that. And until, well, Tuesday evening in this case, it'll be somewhere around 7 o'clock. Then it'll be bye for now, and maybe something on Wednesday as well, but we'll see how that goes. So watch this space. Malcolm, thanks ever so much. Bye for now.